So, I literally just finished recording my character tier list in where I ranked my favorite characters from Season 1 of Yugioh Go Rush. And spoilers, Go Yuna is in my top 3. But the show just now goes and removes her temporarily from the show. But with that being said, she does have a brilliant send-off. So let's talk about it. Hello everyone and welcome to Dueling with Downton, and today we're talking all things episode 54 of the Yugioh Go Rush anime series. An episode that gives Go Yuna more character development and shine, as we explore her first encounter with Yugioh in more detail. Plus, we do still get a more of a tonal shift in the atmosphere of the story, as things continue to look bleaker for our heroes. So this is how we're going to do things. Firstly, we'll talk about Yuhi, then Manabu, and then finish off with Go Yuna. After all, she was the main focus point of this episode, but there are still some interesting things that we can discuss surrounding the other characters. So then, Yuhi. Currently, we know that he's struggling to deal with all of these changes and has lost his passion for dueling. And now he's been bestowed this task/goal of taking care of Phaser, which seems like an impossible task already. But if you add on the fact that Yuki's just witnessed Manabu using his full strength, looking like he's aligned with Phaser and MIK's new goals and ambitions, Yuki is now thinking that he's got 3 main enemies to contend with. He's got Manabu, he's got Trelamo, and he's got Phaser. 2 out of those 3 people I just named have now got maximums, and Yuki has witnessed both of those overwhelming power that they possess. Add on the fact that Yuki has just seen Go Yuna, who I would say Yuki does consider a strong and powerful duelist, get defeated and now carded. So our heroes have lost 2 very strong duelists that Yuki respects a lot. They both tried and failed, which makes the whole scene with Yuki on his hands and knees looking sad and devastated even more impactful, as all of this just keeps adding to Yuki's mental struggles that he's currently experiencing, as the pressure and mental pain of loss continues to grow in Yuki's mind. As for Manabu, he's in a bit of a sticky situation, as he only is working under Phaser as a way to gain more intel to learn the process of how the carding works. My guess is that Manabu wants to learn this to help counter Phaser's plan, and then maybe save Ranrad. It's possible that the real reason as to why we haven't seen or heard about Ranran's character yet, after this time skip, is because she tried to go up against Phaser, lost and got carded, and both Manabu and Nanderstark would have their own reasons, respectively, to save Ranran. Loyalty, respect, friendship, and just doing the right thing are just a few of the reasons as to why they would have a cause to help her. Now then, Manabu acting up and being over the top and goofy ultimately backfired. Yumu could tell that he was planning something and doing it for a reason, and I think so did Phaser. After all, Phaser looked really bored watching Manabu, and there were a few times when Manabu hesitated or said something that could come back and bite him in the booty/used against him in the future. For example, when during the maximum, he did say, "No, I drew it," but ultimately had to forcefully use it, otherwise it risked his cover being blown. Or the time where he showed no interest in carding Yuna, but ultimately she ended up still getting carded. Manabu may have won this duel, which bought him some more time, but I think he is still less free than he was before he won. He's still having eyes watching him on his every action and every movement. As a side note though, Manabu's maximum is really cool looking and definitely the better one out of Phaser's and himself. The show loved giving Manabu really cool looking monsters and cards, and they still continue to do that here, which I appreciated. Also, it was great to see him learn the fact that you can only be carded if you lose to a maximum. So our heroes could still duel MIK's top executives and lose, but survive to fight another day if no maximums were used in the final attack. Or was that line said on purpose as a bit of a false sense of security? Because then, if that was the case, then it would also mean that Phaser is testing Manabu's loyalty. Now then, Goha Yuna. We've seen more of her interactions with Yuga when he first arrived in Mutaba Town, and we learned a few interesting things about Goha in the process. It turns out that before Yuga arrived and introduced rush dueling to both Yuna and Asaka, Goha Company was on the verge of being bankrupt. So it wasn't being successful at all. And we also know that prior to Yuga's arrival, Yuna and Asaka were in communication, because when Yuga first introduced himself and crashed into Mutaba, both Yuna and Asaka were together, which was rather surprising. Now, it's worth noting that Yuga in this scene looks different yet again. It's almost a similar design to his End of Sevens sort of gear that we see him in the spaceship when he returns, but still slightly different. And obviously, if he had the same design as he does at End of Sevens, it wouldn't fit in the timeline that we have at the minute when being consistent. Now, throughout the flashbacks we get of Yuna's time with Yuga, we do see two things. Firstly, she's always referring to him as Guy-kun or that guy, never using his name, which makes me think that she doesn't actually even know his name. If Yuga never told her his name, then would Yuga be worried about causing some sort of time paradox? Or something similar to that? Because if you change the past, would it change something in the future? But then again, that can't really be the case, because if he was that worried about that, then why would he introduce rush dueling to a time period that doesn't even have it? The only logical reason I can think he wouldn't tell Goha Yuna his real name is because of his encounter with the Yugioh and the aliens already knowing of rush dueling thanks to the relic, so he's happy to introduce rush dueling to them because it's something this world already knows of for some reason, but they don't know of Odo Yuga, the creator of rush dueling. So he's keeping his name under wraps in case someone out there knows of it. Or a wild alternative to this would be the person that crashed into Mutaba isn't Odo Yuga, but instead a slightly younger Otis. Still though, not a strong theory, as there's little evidence to back this up, and we see the events that follow afterwards. The red jacket, the hair, the smile, it all looks like the Yuga that we know already, just slightly taller. The second thing that we see from Goha Yuna's flashbacks when thinking of Yuga is this golden glow effect. Every memory seems to be a little bit exaggerated and very romanticized, as we see a lot of Goha Yuna's emotions towards Yuga. Emotions like respect, passion, amazement, gratitude, and even they allude to the feelings of love being involved. With the birth of rush dueling in this time period, Goha Company has been revived and is now thriving. Yuna has gained/regained her passion for dueling. And after seeing how hard and passionate Yuga has worked, it inspired and made Yuna feel the sense of amazement, witnessing it all unfold. She started to also feel reliant on Yuga, thus, in the process, losing her motivation for running her company and joining Rovian, thus leaving Yuga in charge to run Goha. And I love how our inner egos that we get introduced to have basically called her out on this behavior and her actions. Speaking of which, seeing her inner egos and how they're all linked to different attributes, fire, water, wind, earth, and darkness, and with our Goha Yuna being the light, that was awesome. But at the same time, each ego displays a little tiny bit of trait that we've seen from a Goha sibling from Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. Obviously, the blue-haired Yuna kept saying tuna at the end of her sentence. We have the red-haired Yuna being a bit fiery/passionate, a little bit like we saw Yuka being, and so on and so forth. And although the alter egos seemed really harsh and mean at first towards Yuna, they ultimately had her best interest at heart and wanted her to figure out the real reason as to why she was the way that she is, and wanted her to grow and become stronger. So ultimately, Goha Yuna needed to regain her ego and take charge of her own company and business, handle it herself. Thus, her realizing that she needs to give Yuga a piece of her mind and take back control. Because if things remain the way that they are, Go Hot Company will crumble once again when Yugioh returns to the future like we know he eventually does. I also loved how Yuna does see herself at the start of this episode as weak and unsure of herself, because this mirrors a bit of what Yuhi is going through / feeling. The difference here though is that Yuna is trying to overcome it and change and grow, whereas we don't see that from Yuhi right now. Yuhi seems really stuck, and the more that keeps happening, the lower Yuhi seems to get. Another thing that I loved and I thought added more impact to Goha Yuna's evolution was her crying at the end when she lost, as it shows just how hard she tried, and yet despite those best efforts, it wasn't enough. So there was a mixture of sadness and frustration in those emotions at the end, which I think those involved perfectly summed up, like, what she wanted to get across in her duel, and how she really was trying desperately to become someone new. There was just something magical and positive in that ending. I don't know why. As for our own deck though that we get to see her use, I love these monsters designs for this deck. It's a deck that I'm certainly going to try and get, both in real life and in the games when they become available. Okay, they are influenced a bit by Yuga's cards / playstyle, but it still feels unique to Goha Yuna, and that I really do like. Design-wise, brilliant. Can't fault them. So hopefully we see her duel with these cards more in the future. And finally, Rovian. Will we see Rovian act in an attempt to get Yuna back? Because we see a little bit of a focus on Rovian's character within this episode. And now the situation is a reverse switch in what it was within the Great King of Terror arc. In the arc, we saw Valug freeze Rovian, and then we saw how much Yuna cared about Rovian and the lengths she went to in order to get her back and thaw it out. So will we see the same determination, the same resolve from Rovian to get Yuna back to normal and show how important Rovian thinks their friendship really is? So overall, yes, I am sad that Yuna has lost, and now she is nothing but a card. For now. But she had a brilliant episode, and I think we could possibly see some interesting things happening moving forward with other characters involved. Things seem dark and sad right now, but next week we will shift away from that for a moment as we duel it out to see who becomes the next president of the school that our heroes are attending. A crazy prediction is that Asaka will use a maximum in this, as she chooses to join MIK for not only the Mutsuma company to get that back, but also to try and get more information about the reversing of someone being carded so she can get Yuna back. But no, seriously, on that point, seeing the friendship between Yuna and Asaka throughout the season 1 ending and now has been really wholesome, and I hope they continue to expand on that moving forward. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. If you have, hit that like button. Let me know your thoughts, and of course, have a great day. Subscribe for more things Yu-Gi-Oh! Alligator, Martinet. Goodbye.